In this chapter, we're going to cover the concept of elasticity and what that means in the economy and what's the usefulness of the concept itself. We will see how we calculate the price elasticity coefficient. We're going to look at the price elasticity of demand as well as a price elasticity of supply. We bring back the concept of a cross elasticity of demand and also income elasticity. At the end, we'll see how the concept is used in firms and colleges to set up prices. Okay, so the content to cover in this chapter will be price elasticity of demand, total revenue test, which is easy to use, better than a price elasticity calculation, the determinant of price elasticity of demand, and price elasticity of supply. And also we're going to look at the cross elasticity and income elasticity of demand. So what is price elasticity of demand? As you see, the price elasticity of demand assess the buyer sensitivity to price change. How sensitive are we to a price change? What I mean by that is if the price change a little bit, how people are going to react to the quantity purchase of that particular good. So if people react by changing the quantity demanded larger than the price change, we will conclude that the demand is elastic. But if people are not much sensitive to the price change, meaning that the price change by the quantity demanded change with a small amount, the demand is said to be inelastic. So how you calculate the price elasticity coefficient, what we call E sub D, is a percentage change in the quantity demanded of a product divided by the percentage change in the price of that product. Right. Say as this, you will see that anytime you talk about change, it's a variance between two positions, right? Where the initial position and now the new position, right? So to avoid the challenge that the first formula pause, the economists agreed to use the midpoint formula, right? So the midpoint formula measure elasticity over a given range of prices, right? Whether one start at higher prices and go down or start at lower prices and go up, right? The midpoint formula calculate the average elasticity over a range of prices to avoid the problem of where you started from. So I will recommend you to use the formula if they ask you to calculate a coefficient of elasticity. So use this formula to calculate that. Okay, so price elasticity of demand, the formula is expressed in percentage to avoid any confusion, right? It's a unit-free measure that helps you to compare how consumers are sensitive to the price change, right? Also for the price elasticity of a demand, you will see that you have to deal with a minus sign. And the minus sign is due to that inverse relationship between the price and the quantity demanded, which we alluded to when we talk about the law of demand, right? That downsloping demand curve. So now that you calculate the coefficient, what to do with it, how you know the price, the demand is elastic versus inelastic. So how you do that is you compare it to 1. So if ED is greater than 1, you conclude that the demand is elastic. If ED is equal 1, the demand is said to be unit elastic. And if ED is less than 1, the demand is inelastic. There are some extreme cases that I need to point out here where ED is equal 0. And in that level, we say the demand is perfectly inelastic, and ED equal infinite, the demand is perfectly elastic. So when the elasticity coefficient is less than 1, right? So the percentage change in quantity demanded is less than the percentage change in the price. So consumers are not that sensitive to the price. And like when the ED is greater than 1, the percentage change in the quantity demanded is greater than the percentage change in the price. People are more sensitive. And when ED is equal 1, those are kind of a special case. It's called unit elastic. This means that the percentage change in the price and the percentage change in the quantity demanded are similar or equal. Perfectly inelastic demand means that consumer will buy exactly the same amount, no matter how high or lower the price are on the market, right? People are not sensitive at all to the price. And perfectly elastic means that nothing will be purchased if there's a deviation in the current price. So look at it on the graph. This is a case of perfectly inelastic demand. So the curve of a perfectly inelastic demand that is shown here, you can see that the demand curve is parallel to the vertical axis, right? So the coefficient, the elasticity coefficient is 0, right? An example of a perfectly inelastic demand might be a diabetic in demand for insulin, right? Or a drug addict in demand for heroin. So next one is a perfectly elastic, right? The perfectly elastic here is that a little change, a little deviation in the price will cause the buyer to increase their purchases from 0 to what is possible to obtain on the market, right? And the coefficient or the elasticity coefficient is infinite. An example of perfectly elastic demand here is the demand curve for a firm in a purely competitive market, right? Such as the mining industry, for instance. And that is unable to change the price. Total revenue test, I encourage you, whatever you want to determine the elasticity or how sensitive people are. If you can't use the total revenue test, it's easier than calculate the coefficient. Unless they instruct you to calculate the coefficient, I will advise you to use this test over here. So total revenue as a definition is the price, the selling price times quantity give you the total revenue test. So the total revenue test states that for inelastic demand, the price and the total revenue move in the same direction. So if you increase the price, your total revenue will increase, right? If price decreases, the total revenue also decreases. For elastic demand, the price and the total revenue move in the opposite direction. So if you decrease the price, your total revenue will increase, and vice versa. So now let's look at the illustration of the total revenue test with elastic demand. So elastic demand here, if you decrease, we say that above move in the opposite direction. So if you lower the price from 2, in our case over here, 2 at 2, your A, so at 2, the quantity purchase is $2, the quantity purchase is 10. So your total revenue will be 20, which is this yellow rectangular area. If you decrease the price from 2 to 1, you will see that the quantity purchase is 40. Now your new total revenue is the blue area. You can see that again in the blue exceed the loss in yellow, right? So this is a typical example of using the total revenue test with elastic demand. Total revenue test with inelastic demand. So here, if we say that both move in the same direction, so if we started with a price of 4, the quantity demand is 10, so your total revenue is this 40, which is this yellow area, rectangular area. So if the price drop from $4 to $1, you see that your new total revenue or quantity purchase is 20, your new total revenue is this blue area. So the loss over here exceed the gain. The case of unit elastic demand. So we say that both vary proportionally. So if you look at it here on the graph, you see that if we started with an E, where the price is $3 and the quantity purchase 10, and with the total revenue of 30, which is this yellow area. So by dropping the price from $3 to $1, what we see is we move it to F, right? So the gain over here is equal to the loss, which is in your yellow area. Okay. Now let's put both together and see this example by looking at the demand curve and also look at the total revenue curve. So if you notice here, the higher price section of the demand curve, the demand is very elastic. People are sensitive to it. And translate into this graph, the total revenue graph, you see that as the price decreases from A all the way to 4, what happened to the total revenue? The total revenue increases, right? And we get to the midsection, which is a unit elastic, when the total revenue didn't change, right? And in a lower portion of the price, what we see is as the price keep decreasing, what happened to the total revenue? Total revenue also move in the same direction. So this table summarizes everything we say related to price elasticity of demand. So I want you guys to pay attention to it. And also look at the elasticity coefficient. If it's greater than 1, equal 1, and less than 1, what that means. So with more substitution and proportion of the price in your income, with more substitute available, consumer have more alternative, more choice. So they have more option to decide from. When there's a change in the price, there's a greater percent change in the quantity demanded because of consumer have flexibility to, and they have more choice, right, on the competitive market. And that makes the demand more elastic because people become more sensitive to a price change of a particular product because they have option, right? So the greater the proportion of income needed to buy a good, the more elastic the demand is. So if you think about it, if you are in the store to purchase a salt, a bag of salt, you are not sensitive to any price change, but you won't have the same behavior if you're in the dealership to purchase a car. because the price tag of core is in the 30,000, which is in your income. For the majority of people, 30,000 represent a chunk of portion in your annual income. So yeah, if there's a price change, that will impact you more than go to a grocery and see the price change and in salt, for instance, or gum. People who eat gum, if the price change, how many of you will notice that there's a price change in salt or gum compared to a price change in the core? So luxury and time, right? If you look at luxuries and necessity, so for luxury, the demand is more elastic, because for the price change, that people are more sensitive to it because it's not something that they have to get. Right? If you have a vacation coming, a luxury vacation coming in a resort, if the price change, you might say, well, I wait until next year. Compared to a necessity, if you have a surgery need to be done, you don't have that flexibility to say, well, I'm not going to get a surgery because the price change, because you are insensitive to the price change done. Again, the majority of people will be insensitive to the price change for surgery that is needed than a luxury good, which is like an example of a nice vacation. More time you have, the demand is more elastic. And this is a scenario of you have a meeting, you have to go places, and you have a meeting at a particular time, you have to take effort to go there. So now the time is more sensitive to you. You don't have the time. So you don't look at how much the ticket will cost you. That's why business travel tend to pay more than leisure travel. If you go on vacation, your own vacation, you tend to shop around because you have a time on your side. So you are more sensitive to the price. So these are some of elasticity of goods, right, in this table. So use the determinant of demand to discuss why Major League Baseball are not only elastic, but also more inelastic than gasoline, right? Major League Baseball ticket are not only inelastic, but they are also more inelastic than gasoline, for instance. So application of price elasticity of demand. A large crops yield mean that the supplier of crops increase and shift to the right. When this occurs, the equilibrium price fall. And since the demand is inelastic, lower price lead to lower revenue for the farmer. Farmer are worse off when there is a large crop yield than small crop. Another example is when government wants to impose taxes on goods. Right? It is important for them to understand the elasticity of demand for the good before they put the taxes on it. Because government, the bottom line, they want to collect more revenue, more tax revenue. So you want to impose tax on the good that will achieve that goal of getting more tax revenue. So if people are very sensitive to the good, if you put tax on it, your revenue is going to drop. Okay. The criminalization of illegal drug, right? The demand is inelastic. So if example of heroin or cocaine were legalized, the price will decline according to people who put that idea forward, right? Demand for illegal drug like this or inelastic for a drug addict. The drug addict doesn't look at the price. If it's $20, $30, $40, they're still gonna cannot get anywhere because they don't look at the price. So the demand is inelastic for them. They're going to buy no matter what. And so if the proponent of the idea mean that if they legalize it, the price will go down and government will have to regulate the component of those drugs, which is a very sensitive discussion today. For some people, the opponent of that idea come out with the social cost by legalizing illegal drug. You kind of send a message that it's okay to use that. Now that we complete the price elasticity of demand, let's look at the price elasticity of supply, which is similar to the price elasticity of demand. The price elasticity of supply measure how the supplier responds to price changing. Elastic supply, producer are very responsive to price changing. If it's an elastic, producer are not as responsive to the price change. So the calculation or the formula of the ES, in this case, the coefficient of elasticity of supply, in this case is E sub S. It's the same thing as what we saw for the demand. The only thing we substitute the terms demanded by supply, right? Percentage change in quantity demand, quantity supply of the product divided by the percentage change in the price. And the interpretation of the coefficient is the same as the coefficient, the price elasticity of demand coefficient. If the ES, price elasticity of supply coefficient, is greater than 1, you conclude that the supply is elastic. If it's equal 1, it's a unit elastic, and less than 1 is the supply is inelastic. And additionally, we have ES equal 1 when the supply is perfectly elastic, perfectly inelastic, I'm sorry. So price elasticity of supply and at the time. So the ease of shifting resources between alternative use is very important in the price elasticity of supply. Because of what? Because it determines how much flexibility the supplier has to adjust the output to the change in the price on the market. So more flexibility you have time to adjust yourself to the need of the market, right? The new preferences of your consumer. So here, the degree of flexibility and therefore the time period will be different in different industry. So the immediate market period mean that there's no time to adjust to output in response to a price change. You don't have no immediate market period, you don't have time to adjust your output, right? To respond to the price change. So you're gonna keep doing what you're doing. Some industry may not have an immediate market period, right? The short run mean that there's enough time to adjust the output by increasing or decreasing only the variable input, but not the fixed input. And the long run, you have enough time to adjust the variable and the fixed input. So you can adjust your output by increasing or decreasing all your input, fixed and variable. So now if we look at it on the graph, started with the immediate market period. So you have, it's a perfectly inelastic. So in immediate market period, there's no time for the seller to adjust to price change, right? So the market supply is perfectly inelastic. right? So if the demand change, the demand change from D1 to D2, the quantity supply, right? The demand change, the price change over here, the quantity supply is still the same. The quantity did not change at all. Right, the quantity did not change at all. The short run, a little flexibility. So in the short run, there's enough time to adjust the output by increasing or decreasing only the variable input, not the fixed input, right? Only the variable input. So you have a flexibility compared to the immediate market period. A little room to maneuver. In the long run, there's enough time to adjust output by increasing or decreasing all your input, right? Including the variable and the fixed. This means that supply will be even more elastic. Right. In the long run, all the input are variable, right? In the long run, there's no fixed. Everything becomes variable because you have time to adjust anything. Even the size plan of your business, you can decide to shrink it or expand it based on the need of business. So applications for elasticity for supply, antiques and non-reproducible commodity like gold, those things that are unique have an inelastic supply because they are unique. You cannot replicate them. But if there's a reproduction, something that you can reproduce, they are not, the supply is not inelastic anymore. Right? It become more elastic supply. I set over here the example of gold prices, why the gold prices are volatile because of the supply of gold is highly inelastic and unstable due to many reasons. One of them is a speculation that caused the price of gold to fluctuate significantly. Within a short period, you can see the price of gold go up and down. So now let's move to the concept of a cross elasticity of demand, which is you have E sub X and Y for two products. So it will be the percentage change in the quantity demanded for one product divided by the percentage change in the price of the other product, right? The consumption of a good can also be affected by the change in the price of a related good. So cross elasticity of demand help us to assess or to quantify the degree of change in the consumption. So cross elasticity of demand refer to the effect that a change in a product price, right? The impact of the change in a product price to the quantity demanded of the other product. So here you will see that if a good are substituted, you can use one, either one or, so they will have a positive cross elasticity of demand. Right. Since the change in the price of one product and the change in the demand of his substitute to move in the same direction, right? If we decrease the price of one product, the quantity demand of the product would drop also, would decrease because people are going to shift the demand toward the one that become less expensive because of the limitation of budget. So if the goods are complement, they will have a negative cross elasticity of demand for the same reason. Because now, in that particular, if they are complement, it tend to, the price change one will inversely impact the quantity of the other one. They're both gonna move in opposite direction. This global perspective chart demonstrates the cross elasticity of demand between education spending and increases in the price of food among selected nations. Application of cross elasticity of demand. Company can use the concept to determine whether raising the price of one of their product will affect the sales of the other product. So basically, if you or company sell multiple products, the concept will help you to anticipate what will happen if you increase, what will happen to the quantity of other product if you increase the price of one particular product. Right. So that's something that you need to know before you make that price change. Government also use a concept, right? It can use a concept to assess whether to approve a proposed merger or acquisition of two companies, if to approve it or not. If there is a higher cross elasticity, a higher price, cross price elasticity between the two company product, the governor likely will not approve the merger. Now we go to the formula of income elasticity of demand. So consumption of a good can also be impacted by a change in our income. Right? More income, it will dictate how you will behave toward consumption, how your consumption, the pattern of your consumption. So income elasticity of demand here assess the sensitivity to the change in quantity demanded due to the change in consumer income, right? How the change in your income impact the change in your consumption, basically. So most good are normal good. We already pointed out, right? Most good are normal good that have a positive income elasticity. But the value of elasticity of income can vary widely among these goods. Consumers decrease their purchases for inferior goods when their income rises. But for normal goods, they increase the quantity purchased with when the income rises. But for inferior goods, when the income elasticity helps us to better assess which product and industry will be most affected when household income end up falling due to a recession, for instance. Right. This table over here summarizes the cross and income elasticities. Right. So you have the value of the coefficient here, the description, and here you have the type of good. If it's a normal good, in case of income elasticity, normal good, which is a positive, inferior good is a negative. And if it's substitute, it's a positive because both the quantity and the price move in the same direction. And if it's complement, they move in opposite direction. And the cross elasticity coefficient is a negative number. This global perspective shows you the income elasticity of gasoline demand vary widely across country, and is larger in lower income country, right? Probably because take a big proportion of the income. People are sensitive to it. The last word of the chapter, I talk about the market power of some firm. right? Firms have a market powers and pricing power that allow them to set up their product at a price that are the best for them, because the firm, the desired outcome for a firm is to maximize their profit. So they will have to set up a price in the way that they reach that goal, which is to maximize, not increasing the price, by maximizing the profit. So if knowing the concept of elasticity, it will help you to determine what product price to change at a particular time so that you can achieve that goal. I already alluded to the fact that business air traveler are more inelastic to the demand of airfare because they don't have time on the side. If you compare it to someone going to a family vacation, they are more sensitive to the price because they have time on the side, right? Same way is in family. So firm can charge lower price for children as a result of elasticity of demand. People are going to say, well, just my child gonna pay that much, I won't go to the game. So even though the child gonna occupy the same seat, business know that people, family are very sensitive to the demand of a ticket for a child. They will drop that ticket down so that they can get more, sell more ticket and increase the total revenue. Students, same thing with a student from low-income household offer assistance paying their college tuition, right? But they will take the same education as people from a higher income. Why? Because people from low income are more sensitive to the price of education, because that cost represent or take a big proportion of their income, so they are sensitive to it compared to people, the population, the higher income earner.